I'll just acknowledge we're on Cammeraygal country and pay my respects to their thousands of years of occupation on this beautiful country that we're on, the lands and waters here. Powerful partnerships bring those with complementary strengths together and achieve the best overall outcomes, particularly when done at scale. These partnerships seek alignment, cover a breadth of capabilities and capitalise on strengths. They enhance credibility in our efforts, provide for broader reach and influence, and take communities on the journey. They create durability and they're crucial for species survival. TNC are the largest conservation NGO on Earth and are advancing conservation efforts across 6 continents and including in more than 80 countries and territories. TNC came to Australia 24 years ago and has helped since protect over 27 million hectares of land and waters and helped restore shell reefs across 13 projects spanning 6 states and helped improve land management across broad swathes of country, enhancing the lives of many along the way. Everything we do relies on partnerships and that power that can be found through them. At TNC, we're a trusted partner. Before I skip to that one, we're a trusted partner. We have great ability to source funding. We can provide expert knowledge. We're known for initiative, innovative approaches, and we can broker relationships with a wide-reaching network, and we can help influence policy and governance. What I'm going to do is just go through a few examples. We aim to secure funding and scaffolding for successful projects, and we do this through our partnerships. Essentially, we sort of look at what are great projects with good people and nature outcomes. We think, what does it need? And then we bring it. And our official mantra is, together, we'll find a way. So I'm going to run through a few quick examples and then hand over to Corinne for a closer look at sort of this flagship partnership project delivered by Trust for Nature. So our Indigenous landscapes work is Indigenous-led. We aim to support groups build their capacity and durability, which then allows healing of people and country and edges us closer towards closing the gap. These partnerships take time and they need to move at the speed of building trust. We need to learn to understand how to walk in 2 worlds and find ways of harmonising 2 vastly different cultural paradigms. Challenging as this sounds, and it well may be, partnerships like this are likely to see some of the greatest outcomes for people and nature. One example is our work with Wallullaku Aboriginal Corporation of the Nigana and Mangala people up in the Kimberley. TNC first supported Wallullaku in 2016 with a project building their capacity to manage fire on country. This was through another strong partnership with the Kimberley Land Council, the KLC, and since then Wallullaku have built capacity enough to divest from KLC, and we've continued to support them with helping develop their Healthy Country Plan and enabling them with an innovative planning tool called Development by Design. And now we're helping support them through their Indigenous Protected Area consultation, which, if and when successful, will protect large areas of culture and ecological significance and include a large stretch of the Madawarra, the Fitzroy River, one of Australia's most iconic rivers and the lifeblood of people and country throughout the Kimberley. Wallullaku have come a long way and they've got a strong future ahead. With the experience and the technical skills to deliver, TNC's reef restoration work is led by TNC itself. These projects also rely heavily on partnerships. In particular, as you can see in this Noosa project, the local community partnerships are critical to the delivery of on-ground, or in this case in water, initiatives. And this project commenced in 2019, and in 2022, 30 rocky reef patches were restored across 4 sites. Although TNC can build and restore a good reef, it can't be done without that expert local knowledge and the support of the local community to get behind the project. These partnerships help ensure it is embraced and maintained over time. Our Protect work in Australia has assisted in securing the protection of more than 27 million hectares, as I mentioned before, of lands and waters over the last 24 years. This is an area roughly the size or a bit larger than the area of Victoria, and it's quite an achievement, and it's a testament really to our strong partnerships. We now need to match that or even exceed it to even get close to achieving our 30 by 30 targets. we've only got 6 years to do it, and it's going to rely on really strong partnerships, which will be critical, if not central, to this achievement. As you can see from this map, that TNC's contributions occur across most of the continent, and this is because we are really striving for representation of all species and ecosystems. When I use the term assist, I refer to the fact that TNC don't own or manage land in Australia, so we need to meet our protection goals really through our partnerships and assisting others to deliver the protection. So a few quick examples are with state governments creating new national parks and currently working closely with Queensland and New South Wales, with some recent wins such as Comaru here in central New South Wales, and in that first picture, the title page, the lakes there in Queensland partnering there. We're supporting the dedication of IPAs, which has been a part of many of our Indigenous-led journeys, including the current IPA consultation with Wulalaku, as I mentioned before. And we've assisted with various private land initiatives, and this includes many of TNC Australia's early acquisition assists with the likes of ACIUCN and Bush Heritage, all helping to secure survival of species, such as the Gouldian finch and greater bilby, along with many other unique species. Another one of Australia's earliest partnerships was with Trust for Nature in Victoria to assist the acquisition of Ned's Corner. Through this particular well-established and trusted partnership, TNC Australia recently supported and established the conservation covenants, or some conservation covenants, for our very first time. So I'm going to pass over to Corinne now for her thoughts on partnerships and a closer look at this fantastic project.
Thank you, Rich. Let me go to the next slide. Well, I'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners on the land we're here and thank them for their custodianship. This is, as Rich said, this is an example of a project, and I laugh because clearly the Plains Wanderer is very topical today. And it's really a complicated partnership, and what I'll talk about is some of the strengths and some of the challenges in running these types of projects. The Trust for Nature, for those who don't know, we're over 50 years old. We're a public entity, but with charitable status as well. So we walk in two worlds, and that allows us to be able to put the Conservation Covenant and Permanent Protection on title. And that's forever. So we think long-term on these things. And as Rich mentioned, we've had a long history with TNC. It's over 25 years, or since TNC came out, that the purchase for Ned's Corner occurred. It's really important to have that trust at an organisational level. And so you do need those, multi-decade arrangements. You also need individuals within, and my sense is all partnership work is based on trust. And then within TNC, you have, and Trust for Nature, we had to have personal connections and trust in each other that we could do what we were each agreeing to. That is hard to build, and quite frankly, there is never a budget line for building trust when you get a grant. If you don't build that in, the thing falls over. So that, fortunately, we had quite a good bank to draw from at an organisational level. Even more fortunately, Rich, who was the face of it, was an ex for Trust for Nature employee. So there was all these multiple relationships, but this sector does that particularly well because we do all kind of move around. So the landscape we're talking about, the Pathos Plains, for those who don't know, it's on the Murray. It's probably the flip side to the BCT areas. Really highly productive landscape. And as we saw yesterday, productive landscapes are very, very difficult to protect. They've been cleared, they're really threatened. And part of the reason is, it's expensive to then do any kind of protection mechanism. And as was said earlier today, we've got to work in partnership on these things. The Trust has been working in that landscape for several decades, and we provide that on-ground trusted relationship with the landholders. We've got some of the landholders who have become so close to our staff that they've actually named various paddocks after our staff. So there's a Kirsten's block. But I think that's about that, build deep trust at that organisational level and then down at that individual level. That then makes it really challenging for me when people move on, but it's about how do you build that trust at various levels. Highly productive landscapes, so it's, you know, farmers and they're grazing there, and the biggest challenge we're facing in this landscape is intergenerational land transfers, and that we're seeing a lot of that with the intergenerational wealth transfer happening across the country. And also, unfortunately, the profitability of cropping has grown substantially. So in this region, it is more attractive to run 5 years of wheat production than to keep grazing. Once you've cleared the land of those grasslands, they're gone. It takes half an afternoon to do one paddock. So no wonder we've only got 1% of this habitat left. So we've got these two drivers. It is the most expensive landscape that we operate in, but it is critically important for this delightful bird. You'll see in the video, we've actually got some pictures of it. Seeing it was, you know, top of the bucket list. But it required a bit of thinking around how do you build a project to then get permanent protection in that kind of environment. So we started off initially with a grant from Country Road, and that they'd never heard of Pathos Plains, let alone Plains Wanderer. But they're also another audience that we don't usually talk to. So we worked with them. We also worked with zoos who were doing their work around it. We worked with NL Energy. You can see all the partners. But one of the key pieces, and this is where the T&C relationship was so important, is a conservation covenant costs, and I'll go into numbers because I think a lot of this discussion does need to be about numbers. Conservation covenant costs $35,000 plus GST to put on title. Pretty cheap if you're going for forever. The issue is the opportunity cost of giving that up for farming purposes, and what we're allowing is grazing, because as we heard this morning, it's the Goldilocks bird. Doesn't like it too short, doesn't like it too long, but it's lighter grazing. Or we're also looking at fire, which is a culturally appropriate way of managing the landscape. So to do that, farmers have to destock. We can't ask them to destock and then give up their livelihoods. That's a pretty tough call to ask people to do. So we have to incentivise them. So we did a reverse auction for that, and for each of those blocks, they were paid to put the permanent protection on. Now those payments were in excess of $1 million. Our overall project was 1.8 million. Vast, but that is the cost of protection, because the other alternative is trying to buy those lands, and we had tried to buy some land up there and we had no change from 15 mil. So there's no point trying to purchase the land, so then you have to look at protection. Now trying to find a funder who is prepared to pay incentives to an individual is really hard. And that's where T&C, we'd had all of those years, were able to understand that for the long-term protection for the landscape, we needed to go this way. That's pretty brave. So I think from that piece, that's a really successful piece. What was difficult is T&C's headquartered, the parent company is headquartered in the US, and we let the lawyers loose a little bit too early. And the US law versus Australian law didn't kind of go too well for a while, because they couldn't understand that in Australia, permanent protection, apart from a couple of night parrot spots, means that you can mine in the future. And it was cultural mismatch. But also, we had to do some deep thinking. The usual thing, we'd started the work and we hadn't been paid yet, so there was a lesson in that project management. But we got there, and how did we get there? Rich and I were at a conference together. We went, we have to sort this out. We brought a third person in, we had a trusted conversation, we got rid of the lawyers, and then we had it signed within a week. So it's around how do you build out your project and how do you lean in onto that trust. What else have I got? Some of that required honesty, understanding what we'd done, also TNC going, you know, what is really good is the alignment. We all knew what we wanted. If you've got that alignment right up front, and that requires a lot of conversation to make sure. The other key piece is stick to your own knitting. Don't try doing what the other party's really good at. We are really critical about that. We're good at permanent protection. We're good at landholder relations. But I'm not going to tell Rich how to do his bit. That's really important. And when we sit in our lanes and we come together, we're far more effective. What I often see is organisations sliding in and out, and then we step on each other's toes and the partnership just doesn't deliver the results. And I think the key piece, so in the end we were able to protect close to 800 hectares, which doesn't sound big, but in that landscape, that's huge. By having those trusted landholder relationships, they help in the ongoing protection of sites around it. That's the other piece. Because those local farmers become invested in what happens in the neighbour's block. And they ring us and patrol and tell each other off. It's pretty, they're running the Plains Wanderer kind of protection program, and it's super effective. So it's around how do you build trust in all of those pieces. We are looking at how we bring traditional owners and the grazing practices, but how we're going to do that is we're going to do it on our reserves, on our land, so that they can choose in the co-management of our blocks so that other farmers can see it, because there's not a lot of trust in those relationships in that region. I will be quiet and then I'll show you a quick video and then we're done.
I love the Pathos Plains. They have this sort of earthly power and this expanse that really is breathtaking, and the sky's huge, the landscape's huge. You know, it's often nice to feel how small you are in a landscape and the power and energy it brings. It's a really special part of Australia. You know, you can feel it from your gut, you know, coming up to your chest and expressing it through the smile in your cheeks, where, you know, you're one of very few privileged people that can now see this bird in the wild. This is one of the only places they're left in the whole planet. And sharing that enthusiasm amongst, you know, project partners and landholders, the excitement is infectious, and everyone just, you know, explodes with joy, and it just was the most amazing feeling.
For me, there's this immense joy and pride for the work that many of my team have done, the work with landholders, the work of the scientists to actually identify the importance of this bird, and joy that nature is continuing and has the ability to thrive, and that we as humans can change the dial.
What we've got here is a sole representation of a whole lineage, a Gondwanan lineage of birds. If we lose this bird, we lose all of that, all of its uniqueness, all of that, what that represents. It'd be an absolute tragedy to lose. Oh, sorry. I see something. So I'm holding a female. You can tell because she's got the spotty necklace, the black and white, and the rufous breast, which I'll try and show you if I can avoid her little kicks, because this is what they love to do. This is as big as a Plains Wanderer gets.
TNC Australia are, we look to find where people and nature and the outcomes are best found across the country. So this is an opportunity that we saw, and Trust for Nature are a great organisation that really need that extra support to facilitate what they can do on the ground, and that's where the partnership comes together really well.
Trust for Nature's role out here is covenanting land, so putting on permanent protection on the title of these farming blocks. And we're only able to do that with the willing involvement of our farmers. And the only reason we would even want to do that is because the farmers have actually looked after the land so well that the place is worth protecting.
I wouldn't have probably done it without Trust for Nature, no, but there's not much of the natural grassland left. Otherwise, they wouldn't be here trying to succeed in what they're doing.
The partnership between Trust for Nature and the Nature Conservancy is really important to us. I think it's symbiotic. It's about two organisations playing to their strength, but having a common goal of protecting Victoria and making sure that there's something here for future generations. So we leverage our science, our skills, our resources and our relationships, and working with the Nature Conservancy, they're able to bring people who are interested in funding projects, whilst we're able to connect with landholders and the landscapes, and the magic happens in between. Trust for Nature would love to see the model of working in partnership with the Nature Conservancy replicated across the state and Australia. We're so much stronger when we're together.
This project, the proof of the pudding is in the eating, and our field trip last night into the grasslands, in the cool of the evening, and the ability to see the Plains Wanderer in its habitat was quite extraordinary. We talk a lot about nature and people, but to me this was nature and people working as you want it to work.